Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to Russell Khaimah School Principal event. We are delighted to have with us today Ms. Holly Simpson, Mr. Lachlan McKinnon, Ms. Uwafa Zuwari, and Mr. Wayne Richardson. I will share their details momentarily. Please allow me to introduce myself. I am Jackie Koba Adero from the Al-Qasimi Foundation. I am excited to be hosting this event today. I have a few housekeeping items to cover about this webinar platform. If you have a question for our speakers, please ask it through the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. We will answer questions at the end of the session. If we don't get to your question during today's webinar, we will be sure to follow up after this. The session will be conducted in English, but feel free to ask your questions in Arabic if you prefer. Also, on the top right of your screen are options for you to choose how to view the webinar. You can adjust to see all speakers at once using the gallery view, or should you choose to just see the person who's speaking, please use the speaker view. So enough of me speaking, let's get the ball rolling. Mr. Lachlan McKinnon is the CEO, Principal, GEMS Education, Cambridge International School, Dubai. His career, which spans over 25 years, has seen him work in both the private and public sectors in Australia, Middle East, and Africa. Prior to his current position, he was the project director for the Vaki Foundation Teacher Training in Africa, acknowledged by President Bill Clinton and now reaching over 1 million students. He was employed also by the Abu Dhabi Education Council as Director of Schools and a Principal in Australia. He was also privileged to present at UNESCO Education for All, OPI Education Festival in Finland, Dubai Careers Roundtable, Building Evidence in Education Dubai, and the GESF conference as a panel member on Teacher Efficacy 2016. These roles have seen him involved in education reform, advising governments, corporations, and schools on delivering high-quality education solutions. He has a Bachelor's of Education, a Master's of Education in Human Resources and Development, and a Master's of Business Management in Leadership and Sustainability. Mr. Lachlan has learned that if we treat people as if they were what they ought to be, then you can help them become what they are capable of being. He knows his role is to help people become what they are capable of being. That is profound, Mr. Lachlan. The floor. No, not the floor. The screen is yours, sir. You're welcome.
Well, there we go. I will just share my screen. Let's hope I've got this right. All right, we all there? You can see that blank screen? Awesome. Wow, that was a massive bio. I'm sorry. I really do apologise to everybody, and I think I need to cut it down. Well and truly. However, just take that last line. I think that's what's really important. If you just take that last line that Jackie just mentioned, that really sums up everything, and I'm pretty sure everyone else would agree with that. So what I'm going to look at today is dispensable leadership. And if I can get everything working properly, awesome. Okay, so Jackie's introduced me. I'm not going to go any further on that. I've got 15 minutes to talk about leadership that takes years to make. 30 years I've been in education now. And I'm still learning and I'm still making new ground. So don't think this is one thing that you can do overnight or in 15 minutes. However, I'm going to give it a go. So let's look through this. So of course I can't go without my passion, and my passion is my kids. And this is the team McKinnon. We're up there, and hopefully in Russell Khaimah, you probably know what's in the background there, and that is Snoopy Island. So they are my passion, and you know, the family that plays together stays together. So I try to keep that at my front. What I'm going to look at is a number of people as we go through this. If I can click with my, okay. So we were asked to talk about a number of items today. And to be honest, as I said, educational leadership is massive. It takes a long time to enact and not just espouse, otherwise not just talk about it. So as I said, I've been lucky enough to get this within 15 minutes. But what I'm going to do is I want to talk to you about 5 particular authors. And I'm going to try and weave together those authors, if you like. And this is 5 recent ones that I've read. I've really enjoyed these people. So John Hattie, if you haven't heard about him, and I'm going to talk a little bit about high-performing schools and leadership. If you don't know what a high-performing school as a leader is, you need to start learning that one really quickly. Second one, John Maxwell, his 5 levels of leadership. Fullen with leading from the middle. Then, of course, vulnerability and presence with Amy Cuddy and Brown. And finally, Fullen again with leadership nuance. So let's start quickly. And I said, I'm going to time myself because as Holly and Jackie know, I do talk a lot. So I'll try and keep it into the 15 minutes. So this is my classroom 30 years ago. Still very proud of it. So let's go through it and look at Hattie's connections with high-performing schools. Really important because Hattie basically said that he has an effect process here. So he believes that 0.4 is where the kids should be to make progress. Anything below that really are things that we shouldn't really be thinking about, or we should spend more time on the effect size that is bigger than 0.4. So let's match it against high-performing schools with good leaders. So what are we looking at? Cleared, shared goals, where we focus on the vision. Really important that all school has that shared purpose. High standards and expectations. Effect size 1.44, massive. Now, I remember listening to Mr. McGeer, Dr. McGeer and ADEC talk about expectations and the fact that there's no ceiling for expectations, and I truly believe it. We get there, we keep going. We get there, we keep going. Clearly effective leadership, distributed, sustainable, collaborative. Now, you'll notice the effect size is not that great. It's still good, but it's not as good as I thought it would be when I looked through this. So, but we do have an impact on student outcomes. High levels of communication. So we need to understand that building professional capacity within each other and within our schools is exceptionally important. And you can see the effect size, 0.82, double what Hattie is saying is progress. So that is a major part of it. Curriculum instruction, assessment aligned with standard. Again, effect size 62.62. So this is really important because it levels the playing field for students and assessment aligns with learning targets, which makes it obviously much easier for them to actually follow through with. Frequent monitoring of teaching and learning. So this is to be non-threatening. It's about continuous feedback. In fact, Hattie talks about feedback as one of the highest effect sizes. Frequent, and it's about building trust. The next one, focused on professional learning. You've got to have that focus there to build capacity with our staff, because if you're building middle leaders, you need to build that capacity. And we'll talk about middle leaders shortly. Supportive learning environment, effect size 72.72. So this is where you physically and mentally building student and teacher relationships. And at this time, where we're talking about leadership times in crisis, if you like, or even education, well-being is massively important with your staff and your students. So don't underestimate that, please. And then finally, of course, is high level of community engagement, shared responsibility. Teachers, parents should be involved and are capable of being involved. It's really important that we involve them. And I know sometimes that's really difficult in some parts of our Emirates. So let's have a quick look through these. And I'm happy to send this presentation on to, by the way, because I talk very quickly being Australian. So you might have to keep up with me. But you can see the effect size of those high standards at 1.44, really high. Yeah, we're at the bottom with school leadership, but we do make a difference. So it's really important you understand those key characteristics of good schools that leaders need to lead. Now let's look at some of the types of leadership. You know them: transformational, transactional, servant leadership, democratic, autocratic, laissez-faire, charismatic, and I'm sure there's more. And I'm sure you know people that fall into those boats. Is transformational the best type of leadership just because it's at the top? I don't know, but I think you need to think about it, because you need to understand which one of those is you. Are you? Are you a dispensable or indispensable leader? So let's look at at Maxwell. Now, Maxwell prescribes some ways about being a leader. Level 1 position. So basically, that badge you wear, is that you? And people follow you because of that badge. Now, as Jackie and Holly also know, I never write on my badge who I am except my name. I never write principal, because people know who you are by the things you do, and they'll understand who you are because of that. So, but level 1, who wants to be on it for very long? You do walk into organisations and you start with that, but no one really wants to be there. So permission. So people start to follow you because they want to, right? But you don't want to stay there for very long. It's a great place to be, but let's move past it. So level 3, production. So this is where you start to produce things as a leader, and people can see your quality. They start to see your depth of knowledge about what you do. And these are by the things that might be systems, it might be processes, it might be instructional leadership or running workshops. Those are things where you start. Now that's a level 3 leader. Now level 4 leader is where you start to build that middle leadership up. People want to follow you because what you've done for them. It's about dispensable leadership. It's about leaders you create and bring with you. And that brings you to a level 5, which is called the pinnacle for Maxwell. And that's what we are supposed to aspire to. And this is where your values start to be shone. And this is where you bring through your level 4 leaders and you build that capacity. But the level 5 for me with Maxwell is great. But to me, it's the bottom level of a top, at which there is no top for. We do aspire to be level 5. I remember having a conversation with someone that told me that it was actually a line manager that said, "Oh, you're not a level 5 leader." Now, what level 5 is about putting your values out first, and it's the bottom to me of how we should be as leaders. And the rest of what we talk about now going forward is the increase on that. So it nicely leads me into the next section, which really talks about presence. Now, this has come from Cuddy, and she has some great understanding about your presence and being present in the room when you have people around you. It's about who you are. It's about your body language when you walk around the school. It's when you go into a meeting, are you listening to learn? Or you're just sitting there? Are you controlling the meeting? Or are you the one that waits to the end before you start making comments? People feel presence. You know it. You know, I've got Sir Christopher Stone is one of our CEOs. When he walks into the room, you can feel his presence, and he said nothing. So it's a really important skill to learn, and you can learn it. It just takes time. But presence brings about vulnerability. And to make that presence, you have to put yourself in uncomfortable situations, which makes you vulnerable. It makes you open to criticism, which leads me on to, clearly, vulnerability, which is in Brian Brown's Dare to Lead. So I think this is really important because you have to make yourself uncomfortable and put your values out the front. So I've got 4 values today. Next week, it might change. Courage, knowledge, compassion, and service. They're the 4 things that I really strongly believe in at the moment. And so I'm trying to work through those. Can you actually name your value and then tell us what that looks like? Write the value down. What do other people know? If they speak about you and someone asks them, what is the value that Lachlan stands for? Would they be able to say any of those things? Really think about it, bring it from your subconscious to your conscious. When you walk around the school, can people see those values on my sleeve, out the front, that trust. And you know what? It's hard. Being vulnerable is difficult. Is it easy? No. Does it make it feel uncertain? Yes. Do we want to self-protect? Always. Does it require courage? Absolutely. But you have to enact these things. Otherwise, you're going to remain as a level 1 leader where you're just going to rely on that badge to do anything. So let's scoot through, and I'm running out of time, so I'm going to speed up, believe it or not. Let's lead from the middle with Fullens. Okay, so I absolutely, one of the things that Jackie talked about in the beginning is I worked in Africa. And one of the things we did do, instead of going from the ministry level, we went from the cluster manager level to the teacher level to bring about change. And we started at the top actually. We started at the ministry level, but we got nowhere. We went down to the cluster level, the cluster manager level, and then into the classrooms and principals, and we got massive build and buy-in. And we built teams, and I'm sure one of our presenters are going to talk about teams shortly, and we built teams to continue on without us. Now, I left that program after 2 years, and we set up some really strong cross-functional teams. And after 5 years, the impact was massive. We did end up training 250,000 teachers, and they did affect, over 1 million students in the schools. A really proud moment from my perspective, because I wasn't still in the program any longer. And they still talk about it today, which is fantastic. But building cross-functional teams are really important. And those cross-functional teams are people from all the way from FS to year 13. You put people on it from SLT to class teachers, even administration. So they own what's happening. Let me go through. Nuanced leadership. I'm on to the last ones, okay? So nuanced leadership is where you see the big picture. And Fullen talks about this in terms of how you see all of these things together. And that's why leadership is never one thing. It's never just transformational, or sometimes it's transactional. But schools are living systems, and it relies on people. And teachers are the main source of that transformation. And I need you to understand that it's not about you. It is about the people that you bring with you. Now, I've traveled fast. I've talked about presence, vulnerability. I've talked about leading from the middle really quickly. That was my Africa experience in about 2 seconds. And it was much longer than that. And nuanced leadership. So I'm going to put you onto something in a minute. Let's see if I can get this working. If it doesn't work next, I'm going to play this video. I'm wondering if this video is working. Is it working? Awesome. Thank you. Which one of these is this you?
That's not good.
Oh, I don't need this. I'm already late.
Somebody will come. Anybody out there?
Are you this type of leader?
No. Sorry. Somebody! Hello! There are 2 people stuck on an escalator and we need help. Now, would somebody please do something? I don't believe this. You gotta be kidding me.
I'm gonna cry.
Well,
sometimes we do cry, by the way. That's okay.
Hello? Hey, don't worry about it. I'll fix it in a second.
He said he can fix it. All right. All right. That's more like it. He says he can fix it.
I'm going to cut it short. Are you the one that stays on the escalator or makes yourself vulnerable in getting it off? Don't always rely or leave it up to other people to make the change. And I know I've just run over by about 2 minutes, Jackie, so I apologise. But I suppose what I'll do is I'll finish off. I'm just going to run these up for you to think about. But I want you to understand at this present time, because one of the things I read was about we're in a time of crisis or a time of change. This isn't normal. Trump is not normal. COVID is not normal. And there's nothing normal about schooling at the moment. right? So please stop expecting normal from everything we do, from our kids and our teachers. I go and do lesson observations, and I tell you what, I don't know, I shouldn't be allowed to. I'm not an expert on technology and how to deliver technology online. Now I'm learning, but I'm not an expert. So we need to think about this. You know, teachers feel like they aren't doing enough. Kids are isolated. Their entire experience of school is turned upside down, and there's no end in sight at the moment. So let's stop expecting everyone just to push through. So I'm hoping that you will fly high. I'm hoping that you will make yourself vulnerable, find your presence, and get out there. Thank you very much, Jackie.
Thanks a bunch, Mr. Lachlan. We really appreciate lots of learning there. And I like the part with what you ended. We should stop expecting normal, because things are not normal now. Sometimes it's very easy to actually keep on moving like everything is normal. We need to cut ourselves some slack and support each other. That escalator, I'm looking forward to the whole video. Mr. Lachlan, please send it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Happy to share that.
Yes, thank you. So our next speaker joined RAC American Academy in 2009, where she began her career as a high school teacher, head of English department, and head of teaching and learning. Miss Uwafa Zuari is the assistant principal, RAC American Academy. She has taught for over 20 years in different schools, where she has become well acquainted with the culture of local schools, the needs of UAE students, and the nuances of UAE's educational system. She holds a Bachelor of Arts in English Language and Literature from Tunis University and a Diploma in Linguistics and Methodology from Christchurch, Canterbury, England. Her educational philosophy is based on her belief that all students can learn when given a positive learning environment, strong and knowledgeable leadership, a committed and focused educational team, and an encouraging community. Ms. Uwafa joined the Sheikh Saud bin Saka Al Qasimi Foundation for Policy Research in 2012 as a workshop instructor, where she assists the foundation to support an ecosystem for human development in Ras Al Khaimah, which nurtures critical lifelong learning and pathways to becoming fully engaged educators as citizens and residents. Ms. Uwafa is skilled and passionate, an educational leader. She possesses a strong commitment to the development of students, supports staff, so that they can reach their fullest potential, and fosters a positive school culture with relationships in the community. Very good to have you, Ms. Uwafa. You're welcome. The screen is yours, madam.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you so much, Jackie. I'm going to share my screen right now.
Sure.
I'm not very familiar with Zoom. Okay, we are using a different platform. I'm going to do my best. Okay. First of all, whether you are a school leader, a teacher, or a counselor across Ras Al Khaimah or elsewhere, you should be congratulated for the tremendous job you've been doing, rising to the challenges that the pandemic has presented to your schools. Now, we all know that COVID-19 has disrupted, schooling globally. It has shaken the very fabric of education. But you, as leaders, have demonstrated that you are resilient and able to adapt quickly to the challenges you are facing and will continue to face. I have no doubt that many of you in schools will review what happened in 2020 to make sure you can continue to adapt whatever comes your way. So in my presentation today, I will be talking about how school leadership has changed during this difficult and challenging time. Now, schools in Ras Al Khaimah that have reopened, as it is the case with our school, have faced the considerable challenges of social distancing, intensive cleaning, and the careful coordination of all movement around the school. Quick solutions, and contingency plans were required and needed to be put in place on a daily basis. So for school leaders working in these demanding and chaotic circumstances, the pressure is persistent and the options are very limited. All the staff meetings and the corridor chats with colleagues, the sharing that used to take place in the staff room that made up, a school day have all gone. All those normal, important, moments where social relationships are built and leadership is enacted simply vanished. And we are now reliant on the guidance that is provided to us, by the Ministry of Education, or the protocols, the procedures, and these can change almost overnight, depending on how the virus is developing. So the social distancing of staff and students means extra work, extra pressure, and every expectation, either from above or from within the school, asks more and more of school leaders professionally and personally. Consequently, school leadership practices have changed because the preparation and the training programs prior to COVID-19 are becoming out of step. Most of us are trying to create new pathways through the disruption so that we can safeguard, the learning of all Ras Al Khaimah students. Think about teaching and learning, the graduation ceremonies, the examinations, the staff professional development. All of these have been modified to remain relevant to the current and potentially ongoing COVID situation. One thing that's worth, mentioning here is self-care. Self-care must be a priority for all school leaders. So if you are leading a school through the changes and challenges that go with COVID-19 and post-COVID-19, we need to put our own health and well-being first. Why is this important? Because we simply need to be able to help others. I'm sure that you are all managing now the emotional responses of your staff to the crisis, including anxiety, frustration, and anger. And these are more than routine problem-solving skills that the school leaders need to acquire. I can personally confirm that the amount of conflicts that we are dealing with currently at school, at RAK Academy, is unprecedented. And this has required a lot of care, a lot of support, and a lot of collaboration from all staff members to deal with. Also, moving forward, school leaders will increasingly need to be technologically savvy and well-informed. COVID-19 has created a huge pressure to buy digital products to facilitate distance learning and communication. And school leaders therefore need to be able to choose the right tools and understand how they work to be able to share and teach their staff. How do we lead when we can't predict what's going to happen next? This uncertainty requires us to adapt quickly and to draw on different skills and types of leadership. So being able to navigate challenging times like these requires adaptability and the implementation of a new set of strategies. This all comes with your experience, your professional learning, and your communication with professional colleagues. And our being here today is an example of good sharing and learning together practice. So thank you all for being here. Now, first of all, health and well-being. First and foremost, we need to focus on keeping everyone safe and then ensure that students and teachers are well supported as well in order to move forward. We are exhausted, and so are our teachers, because we've been given everything to get our schools and communities through this time. However, we have an important role to play to ensure the well-being of our team. And these are some suggestions. And these are some suggestions that I would like to share with you to keep, staff motivated. Increase the frequency of team meetings so everyone can stay connected. Recognize staff for their work, for the work they are doing under difficult circumstances. Remind them of the importance of their role increase the frequency of your check-ins, whether they are online or on campus. Organize social events to maintain connections, and send emails regularly to remind the staff of the fabulous job they are doing. One thing we did in RAC American Academy, which proved to be beneficial, and I would like to share this with you, for teachers, was to seek support of experts to support teachers who were feeling stressed or anxious during these uncertain times. Some of our teachers felt homesick, others felt insecure, others felt literally drained and lost the passion for teaching. So part of our staff assistance plan was to provide them with the necessary physical and moral support to get them back on track. Distributing leadership throughout the school is another thing we should think about. We should delegate leadership responsibility to a network of multidisciplinary teams that will have a significant role in the implementation of the crisis management strategies. These teams normally are selected, based not only on their skills, but on the character traits they possess, such as, a sense of duty, flexibility, openness, and being goal-oriented as well. So distributing leadership responsibilities is very effective. It proved to be very effective in this crisis because it improved the quality of the decisions made, since multiple perspectives can be obtained. And by distributing leadership responsibilities, the teams, they become more motivated, since they have a wider scope for freedom of action when they are problem solving. So these teams should also be allowed to operate in a climate of trust in order for them to innovate and make changes. So we should put some trust in these teams in order to address the crisis. Communication is key. Communication is key to maintaining a supportive environment during this pandemic. It can help in understanding and tackling fears and misconceptions, and strengthening community participation in addressing these challenges. So as leaders, we need to inquire about, first of all, the family's preferred communication channels, as well as about, the kind of support that, both parents and students need. We could use, the website, at American Academy, we use the website, online conferencing platforms such as Teams or Zoom, social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter. We use this platform for communicating, or both to communicate information and to keep in touch, with the students, teachers, and the family members. We also need to create clear and accessible feedback mechanisms, for families to express their opinions and their concerns and expectations. We need to communicate regularly with the staff in order to build, team spirit. We need to foster a sense of trust, because the basis of effective communication with parent and staff starts with trust. And there should be a transparency in the communication in times of crisis, so that the community is clear on the direction that we are heading. Another thing that I would love to share with you is this is best practices that we used in the American Academy. It's the sharing of online tools. It's asking some teachers who are tech savvy to help their peers accessing websites or using certain technologies. We have assigned, staff members, mainly, from the IT department, to conduct regular trainings to the staff and parents and the students as well. We worked, on adjusting curriculum, adapting, curriculum to suit the online teaching and learning as well. We revised our calendars as per the instructions, from the MOE, and we intensified, interdepartmental and staff meetings to ensure people are connected all the time and informed. Now, professional development. At a time when teachers are stressed and overloaded, we must make sure professional development is meaningful. We don't want to waste their time. We need to ask ourselves, what updates and training do faculty and staff need to know now? We need to focus on the most pertinent topics and design training that satisfies teacher needs. Also, knowing that many staff members have entered the virtual classroom for the very first time and may not yet have the skills, the training, or the experience to be effective facilitators of online learning, we need to adapt teachers' professional development training to reflect these new realities. Some tips that I would love to share with you and that we need to take into account when planning, PD sessions. Make your IT department team develop easy to follow tutorials that incorporate, videos, images, and screen recordings that demonstrate how to use the apps necessary for teaching online. Teach methods to teachers to support learners online with different learning styles and needs. How to create breakout rooms, for example, where to find assignments, how to use the chat box as a formative assessment tool, and so on and so forth. Encourage teachers to engage in professional communities to help build a sense of teamwork and collaboration. When it comes to teacher observation, I think that providing support and feedback need to continue. We need to equip teachers as they adjust their practice to distance learning and guide focus areas for further growth. So you leaders and your heads of department will likely find that coaching teachers virtually and about virtual teaching may look quite similar to the coaching of live classroom teachers. Maybe there is a change of focus and some elements are a bit different. It's the degree to which students are involved and engaged in the learning, the use of information technology to enhance learning, the online procedures and routines that support positive learning, the types of library interactions the teacher sets up and how children respond, whether verbally or by using the chat box, the reaction buttons, the emojis within the meeting platform, and all sorts of new things that we are implementing right now. One thing that I am really proud of sharing, when it comes to professional development, we started, in term 3 last year to compile, lessons that were recorded lessons, and then we came up with a bank of recorded lessons. And we are using these to start, a new form of professional development where the teachers, they watch, one of the videos and we engage all of us in a lesson critique. So the new teachers, they have, the opportunity to hear from, the veteran teachers. They are exposed with different strategies. And then, these kinds of critiques, they result in a lot of feedback coming from different perspectives. And it proved to be very beneficial. We are now, standardizing this across all the departments because we started with the English department here at school. So this is another way we started to adapt, our curriculum and adapt, the ways we are evaluating, our teachers, and we are providing, professional development here at RAC American Academy, and which proved to be really beneficial for all. So this is all I wanted to share with you today. It's been a pleasure being with you all, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Uwafa. That was amazing what you shared. I think
thank you.
There's a lot to take from this. How I can summarize this up, you've talked about self-care. Leaders do need to think about that. And you talked about something very key, that's adaptation. Adaptation of teaching strategies, leadership, teaching and learning itself, as well as professional development. And a very good way to segue into Mr. Wade was your last point. You talked about EdTech. At this point, I would love to introduce our next guest, Mr. Wayne Richardson. He is a head of school, IPK, RAC Academy, PYP. Originally from Australia, he joined RAC Academy in September 2016. He holds a Bachelor of Education, a Masters of Education from University of Cambridge, and Masters in Leadership from University of Bath. His career includes teaching and administration in Australia, Fiji, Thailand, England, China, and Indonesia at 6 international schools and a teachers' college. His interests are teaching and learning, questioning and inquiry, and how technology can enhance student understanding. Mr. Wayne, you're welcome.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the presentation. Thank you very much to Lachlan and Wafa. Hopefully my presentation will follow on from yours and drill down a little bit deeper on it. But also a special thank you to the Al Qasimi Foundation for the invitation today. And looking forward to this network that seems to be building up around Ras Al Khaimah. And I think in times of this, where we are in virtual meetings, we don't really get to see each other physically very much and get together. I think this might be becoming more of a new norm, so to speak. So yeah, let's get underway. All right. I'm going to, I know that there's education leadership and hybrid learning and things. I'm going to probably drill more in today, just looking at the hybrid learning and some of the things that we did here, but also from my experiences as the leader and what I tried to do with trying to get into the hybrid learning. It was something new to all of us. You know, I had to get into there, get an overview of the leadership and right down to the classroom level of what this involved. Everybody had to be involved in it. We had to be adaptive, all right, and we had to collaborate. And I heard those words all coming through in the previous presentations. But the main question was, you know, how can we deliver a more effective distance teaching and learning model during the COVID situation? And some of our supportive inquiries we got into is, what did their experience and research tell us? And I'll go into that in a moment. How has it responded to this in the reopening in September, the changes we've made? And what are the next steps for all of us, the teachers, administrators, and the students? So I'll try and touch on each one of those three questions now. But just before I do that, I'll just give you a little bit of context, and this will impinge on everybody's decision-making as leaders. You know, you need to be really aware of what your context is and where you are. But obviously, we're in Ras Al Khaimah. I'm a part of 5 other schools, or 5 schools altogether, but the only one offering the International Baccalaureate School. 500 students internationally, of students, teachers, 40 nationalities in school, 72% local Emirati as well, though. So that combination within our school. We did go into distance learning like everybody else from March till June, full time, 100%. So we got a lot of experience out of that, had a summer break, and then in September, we reopened, and we'd learned a lot from our prior experiences, and we got approval to open up in a 50% children could come in, 50% were on distance learning each day, and they alternate between that. And that's still our context for operating in. With the exception of early years, the early years in the lower school, they are allowed to be in full time, but in split in sub bubbles within the classrooms. Looking at the first question, and I think Wafa has pretty much summed it up, a lot of it just there already, but like all of us, we went into this distance learning pretty much unprepared, you know, and it was overwhelming for all the stakeholders, you know, that's students, teachers, administrators, and the parents, everybody, and well-being became a big, big priority for all of us as well. We've learned that this is the current situation, it's heavily reliant on technology, IT training, communications, I heard that there as well a few minutes ago. So the question was, you know, the pre-COVID strategies, you know, teaching, learning, did they really help us? You know, it's a question of now, do they still help us or not? Or we got to look for new paradigm shifts here. There's been a shift in learning from school to home, you know. We have to be flexible. I heard that a moment ago about accommodating family and their timings. And, you know, I've been in management meetings, teacher meetings, you know, they have to not start from the face-to-face anymore. We really have to start from the online situation. I've got more students in distance learning per day now as opposed to in school. So the starting point for your curriculum planning and your teaching really has shifted. Collaborate as teams, as teachers, as students, and what new resources we need. And I'm sure there's a lot of resources, a lot of other experiences that many of you can identify with there. In response, trying to improve the situation of the main question, you know, what is effective distance teaching and learning? There's lots of information, there's lots of books, but one particular book we came across is Handbook of Research and Hybrid Learning Models. And there's a particular chapter in there, chapter 12. It gives us 8 considerations. It's done by 3 lecturers at Brunel University in the UK. And this is 8 things that they came up with. You know, outcomes-based education, active learning, collaboration, student-centered teaching, feedback for students, learning independence, learning styles and reflection. So what I'm just going to do now is just going to take you through those 8 and give you some ideas of some of the things that we did to adapt from our March to June experiences. We learned from that, and then looking at these research headings as well, this is some of the things that we started to do since September to try and improve it. And what it really led to was, one thing is our quality assurance mechanism that's in place, our performance appraisal system. It has been amended, it has been changed, and a lot of this has been put in place to reflect this. So this is so bring it all into one place. Outcomes-based the learning, we had to look at the curriculum coverage. You know, we've had to cut it down, look at what's essential. You can't cover it all in the distance learning situation. And we've had the usual debates, contents versus skills, how much content, how much skills. And being an IB school particularly, we were focusing on the ATLs, approaches to learning, and there's 5 main skills, and there's sub-skills to them as well. But they've been our priority in our school. We've got new KPIs, and key performance indicator, key objectives in the curriculum. So timetables had to be adjusted. You know, what they were pre-COVID, you know, they're very different. We actually run 3 sets of timetables now. Timetable for when we're in full-time, a timetable when we're in blended mode, and a timetable actually when we're in full distance learning mode. And that's a lot of adaptability, teachers and parents to know which timetables and where we're going. So yeah, active learning, that's what the research was telling us. So one thing was Google Classroom. We had to recenter it, try and get it centered there. So as an academy, you know, we had multiple platforms from the March to June. We've now agreed, you know, the whole academy is operating on Google Classroom. So that's centralized everything for us. We've had a Chromebook rollout from grade 2 right up to grade 9. So that's been a good motivator. It's got everybody active there. Multimedia programs, I heard Wafa mention them. Raz Kids as well. Prodigy Maths, another one. We are finding with those software programs now, you do need to change them. You know, after a while, the kids have come used to those, and so you need another motivation. Look at another software pack to motivate them. Being IB particularly, self-directed inquiry projects, still a long way off there, but we always were, but we are trying to get the kids to be more independent. They're learning, shifting that learning. We know it's at home now. Comprehension quiz, exercise and quizzes, Kahoots, of course. We found that's a real motivator as well. We did start out originally all asynchronous lessons. Then we decided, no, we do some more synchronous lessons, and we do keep balancing between those two, synchronous lessons and asynchronous lessons, giving those different balances. We found that motivate works in and out as well. And I was like this presentation can be recorded. Students can review it later on. Collaborative learning, and this is where the well-being come in, because you know we discovered it was very much isolating, as I'm sure many of you will identify, very isolating in the situations at home there. So there was, we've had to put teachers are very conscious. We have check-ins in the mornings, just like the homeroom, and we have check-outs in the afternoon. Just touching base with the students, asking questions. We've even encouraged parents, have your own collaborations outside of school time, meet up with each other online. So that's been trying to help each other there. Our school counsellor has certainly been doing a lot of work with all our students and with them. So, and then collaboration, obviously in the upper schools, we've had breakout rooms. I'm sure you're familiar with that as well. Student-centered teaching. All right, obviously we were, you have to say before, it was heavily reliant on, we were heavily reliant on the teacher face-to-face in front of those students, in front of that classroom. And that locus is gone now. It's moved really to the students. So trying to really get at the students, and they need a lot of help. The students do need a lot of support, getting them toward that, those independent learning skills. Some of those technologies do help them. They are very intuitive. They're self-directing. So we found that multimedia, it's very stimulating for the kids. Assignments, and some of you might have even tried, I might have heard of flipped learning as well. So we've tried that, giving them the work, giving them some work to do independently, then bring that to the lesson the next day and we discuss it there from that angle. So we're trying these out. Feedback to students, as any of you will know, and the research is telling us over and over, immediate feedback to the students is very, very important. They need that feedback. Everybody needs, teachers need their feedback too, how they're going. So we know that it had to be timely, helpful, and encouraging. We did find, though, feedback, assessment and marking was very overwhelming for teachers. They're trying to keep on top of that where it was being submitted. So we have had to adapt our assessment policy and having some flexibility for teachers and the students for that as well. But that said, we did find some add-on technologies, particularly in Google Classroom, that can help with assessments. You can now do voice messages. Rather than having to mark something or annotate it, you can actually record a message and post it to 10 different students at the same time. So there's some different technology, chat boxes, and Jamboard, other ones as well. So these have been very helpful with giving feedback to students. Learning independence, which connects with earlier, we do have to try and do that. I mentioned the learning outcomes, we've slimmed them down, but even the learning outcomes need to be made into smaller steps as well to help the students, because they are working at home on their own. So you might have to simplify the language, make it an easy step and start building it up, scaffolding the learning for the children so they can operate more independently in that direction. One of our little mistakes we made at the beginning back in March and April was we were assuming the kids had access to the resources that we have at school. Then we had to rethink in our planning what resources the kids, what can they get their hands on at home? So we had to be conscious in our plannings, actually choosing things they can find at home. And I saw a maths lesson in early years this morning. The teacher was asking them to collect up counting blocks or what toys they had, so they were counting with those. And the kids are running off, and they ran off and they came back with them. So, you got to look at what's at home for the children to help them with those. Multimedia, obviously I mentioned that earlier, different websites, and you have to be very conscious of the language you use as well for the children. It's almost another language, so you can connect with them. Learning styles, everything got to be differentiated. You do give different sets of differentiated lessons the students. We have been we're finding the whole class, it is hard to get the students all in at once. So breaking into small groups or even doing half a class of 20 minutes, doing the other half a class in 20, breaking into smaller groups does help with learning. It does suit some of the students better as well. And the learning styles, obviously multimedia resources, some like to list, sometimes to watch, so we've got different ways of that. And reflection, that was there, but that's always been a very key part as an IB learner. It's one of our attributes. So we do try to get the children to reflect, write their comments. I mentioned there earlier in Google Classroom, they can make, teachers can make recorded messages and post them. Students actually can make recorded reflections and post them as well in their Google Classrooms. We found that very helpful. And obviously getting them asking questions in live lessons as well. So that was where I'm not saying we've covered it all. There's still a lot more to go. We're certainly working. We've found these strategies. We're constantly looking for more strategies there. But getting to my third question, supporting question there, where next? Well, that is a big question. Where we're going to go next. We're looking at different models for January already, in classroom arrangements. I was in meetings this morning, they're going to be shifting furniture in classrooms all around for January, see what more kids they can get in, or see how they can motivate kids with different perspectives. But one thing we found helpful, we do regularly conduct surveys, Google Forms or whatever survey. Parents are giving you feedback, students give you feedback, and we've been aligning some of our feedback towards those 8 considerations as well, actually, help for how to refine them. Revising the curriculum, certainly I was in a meeting this morning again. Yes, they want to revise the curriculum again. They're really looking at different emphasis on which skills. Independent learners, I know it's taking a long time. It is really making sure those kids are there, but it's taking a while to get there. Exploring, you can keep new and innovative technologies. We have to keep changing the technologies. Kids, they're a little bit bored of something. We have to keep motivating and changing them. Attendance, as I'm sure you're trying to get those kids there, trying to get them out of their pajamas. We are trying to get them there, so we do make the phone call. If they're not there, we've got somebody phoning them up and trying to find out where are they, because it's important that they are there making that progress. I mentioned they're giving that immediate feedback. We're trying to get that feedback to them as much as possible, as quick as possible. We found this re-interviewing every 5 or 6 weeks. We are now having online interviews with the parents and the student interviews. Google Meets is very good at that. Trained our parents up, the meeting is there with that. Progress reports, they've had them. Progress reports have gone out, just little reports, giving them regular progress, and we've posted them out today as well, so it's this week. So that's been very helpful. Teachers, well-being, we've got some of our teachers who are working with groups of students 100% online. We've got new support teacher groups set up, and a lot of them have done it themselves. They've got support. They're meeting regular on Sunday and Monday mornings, and then just giving and sharing their experiences. And a lot of this, what I'm telling you, has come from them to do that. So that's something that's innovative that's come out of it. Professional development sources, Wafa was mentioning that as well. We are looking at what other schools, I've certainly been in contact with Abu Dhabi and Dubai schools, how they're doing it this last week or two, so getting ideas from them. Quality assurance, I mentioned, that's where a lot of this has, our whole performance appraiser has updated that, and our performance management there. So in the management team, obviously being involved from a very different angle, different perspective. And the COVID, you know, it has changed people's job descriptions. We all have new different roles now, so you know, they've been rewritten and they'll be continued to be rewritten, I'm sure. But management levels, you know, we have to be involved at all levels. Now, I've really had to learn about Google Classrooms and get down to that level and watch it, how it works, you know. Technology, finding solutions, you know, we have to keep looking for solutions to carry on here. And communications, you know, I've found that particularly at my level, really have to have, we're heavy on communications, particularly with parents, with teachers, keeping everybody informed. We've done everything here just about has to be bilingually and make sure it's bilingually translated. Even our training videos, Google Classroom, we've converted them into Arabic as well for the parents, so they can access them online anytime. So it's been a lot of work in that direction as well. Anyway, in case you're interested, that's what I've just spoken to. That's been 3 main references there. Obviously the management 2 there at the top there, getting a overview of thing. Hallinger's been very helpful with getting a context of our situation. And I mentioned the handbook for research and hybrid learning, which we've adapted. We've taken those there as well. So I'm not sure how long I've taken, Jackie. Hope I haven't been too quick there, but thank you very, very much for listening. And I hope I've been helpful to everybody and giving you some pointers and ideas and where you can go next. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Mr. Wayne. That was a lot of learning. You are the tech guy. Speaking of technology, how has your digital transformation worked? Because I know you've taken a new digital transformation journey with Intertech. How is that working?
Yeah, I think it's like anything. It's some people adapt to it very quickly, you know, and those are a little bit slow. The early adopters were straight in there. We have been looking for champions. We've even got our student council have had a spin-off this year. We've got digital champions coming out of there as well. So, you know, students will adapt much quicker sometimes than us adults. So we've got them in there. Those Chromebooks have been really rolled out. So they've been we're pushing the limits on there, but a lot of training, a lot of professional development training, and it's ongoing, you know, it's very good. One thing that's been, I'd say, a little bit of a difficulty there is in the past, you can invite parents in. We had regular Tuesday meetings with parents, bring them in for training, but unfortunately, we're not allowed to have parents on campus. So it has been a little bit of adaptation, you know, trying to teach parents how to do Google Classroom over the internet. It has been a little bit of a challenge, but we'll keep going with it. Well, we've got bilingual trainers, which has been very helpful. You do have, when it helps you get bilingual trainers live online there with the parents, it has bridged it quite a bit.
Wow, well done. Hats off to you and wish you all the best with that.
Thank you.
Yes. So last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, is Miss Holly Simpson. She currently leads kindergarten and primary quality assurance in an international school in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. I nearly bit my tongue, Miss Holly, saying that.
Well done, you got it.
Thank you. She is passionate and driven about the field of education and strives to bring people and the community together to create a school culture, environment, and a curriculum that excites teachers, students, and parents. Holly believes that servant leadership and a deep understanding of staff's individual strengths are integral to the overall success in the progress and development of a school. She has worked and led schools in Ras Al Khaimah and has a deep understanding of the UAE systems and procedures. Even though Holly now lives in Vietnam, she says her heart remains in the UAE.
Here's my heart.
Home is where your heart is. You are part of Ras Al Khaimah and always welcome, Miss Holly. The screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Jackie, for a very warm and kind welcome. I am really excited to be part of this virtual event, and the fact that I am in Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh City, well done, you got it right. You know, it's fantastic that I can still be part of the Ras Al Khaimah community and have that platform to, you know, liaise with principals that I have worked with before, Mr. Lachlan. You know, I know Wafa very well as well. You know, we went to a conference in Beirut, Lebanon. That was all to do with education and leadership. And, you know, very nice to meet you, Mr. Wayne. I've worked at RAC Academy. That was the very first school that I worked in when I moved to the UAE in 2008. So very, very grateful to be here. So I'm going to share my screen with you as well. So just bear with me a second. Yeah, fantastic. Let me just play it from the beginning. Okay, so I'm going to talk about quite a few things that both Lachlan and Wafa and Wayne have spoken about this afternoon. And it's quite endearing and lovely to hear that the UAE and principals are thinking about self-care and well-being as being fundamental, certainly in the crisis of COVID-19, which, you know, I'm very lucky here in Vietnam. We don't have any local transmissions. You know, the death rate is 35 currently, and, you know, we're operating as normal. Schools are working as normal, and there is no COVID-19 as such. So it's very interesting to hear, you know, how you are dealing with it in the UAE. But what I'm going to talk about this afternoon is 4 main points, and it's about how great leaders, and I've learned from somebody in this platform, Mr. Lachlan, inspire action and ultimately build a positive team, a positive environment, and focus on developing the staff. So number 1 for me, I'm going to talk about 4 main points, is self-care. And, you know, self-care for our teachers and our staff, but also self-care for principals. You know, what are we doing as a principal to look after ourselves? We have a lot of responsibility on our shoulders, a lot of decisions to make on a daily basis. You know, everybody looks up to us, as Lachlan said, because, you know, we have got that title, but everybody looks up to us for answers. So what are we doing as a leader, as a principal, you know, to support our self-care? And this is something that I have certainly got better at over the years. When I first took on leadership roles, I was very much, you know, trying to do everything, trying to multitask, not delegating enough, you know, making constant mistakes, not investing in myself, my own self-care, and stopping and having that time, Mr. Lachlan's pointing, to evaluate, you know, what we were doing and where we were going. So it's very important, number 1, to have that time to reflect, whether it's at the end of the day, whether it's, you know, before you go to bed at night, whether it's the following morning before you go to school, to reflect and think about, you know, what was great about the day, what problems did you face, what problems came to your door, came to your office, and, you know, teachers came with solutions. What do you need to do next? You know, students, what problems did you encounter with students? Did students come and talk about something? But it's having that time to be alone, finding a very quiet space, whether it's at home. For me, it's not at home because I've got my my family here, but it's normally in my office when everybody's gone, and I sit and I reflect in a journal and I write down all the strengths of the day and sort of next steps, and then I strategize where I'm going next. And that has been very, very helpful in supporting the goals and visions of the school, but also helping myself. The next point I want to talk about, this is very dear to my heart, something that I'm doing more of, is time to exercise and putting movement into your day. As principals, as leaders, you know, we might be moving around, running around the school, but, you know, are we giving our brains, our bodies that time to move and to, you know, nurture ourselves? Feed our soul, feed healthy, and that's important. So I have adopted now exercise into my daily routine, and that has really helped me to feel calmer, feel more balanced, more alert, and I feel I'm a better colleague and I'm making better decisions. So I definitely encourage exercise, and you need to find your vibe, find those things that you really like to do. Preparing healthy, nutritious food. Okay, so very important to think about as principals, as leaders. I would use Talabat in Ras Al Khaimah, and I would just order everything and anything at different times. And it's important to establish that routine where we can just stop and eat. And we might be stopping to eat with ourselves to have, again, some quiet reflection time. Or it could be we're joining the staff room and we're sitting with staff, we're sitting with colleagues, we're sitting with teachers. We're removing that stigma of title, and we're having those informal chats over lunch, which I think is really important for them to see you as a human. Principals do eat food, we do need to stop. And I think that's very, very important. The next one is, and this was mentioned a few times already, was committing to continuous improvement. So finding the time, we give a lot to everybody, but it's finding the time for continuous improvement. And that can be as simple, and Lachlan mentioned this, is, reading a book. There's a wealth of research out there on leadership that we need to tap into. Lachlan shared a range of books earlier on. And it's finding that time to commit ourselves to learning. We never stop learning. I heard somebody else say that, we never stop learning. So it's tapping into time and creating that time to keep on learning. Okay, and then the last one, the very last one for self-care is time with loved ones, family and friends. Disconnect from responsibilities and your title in school and what you do, and having that time with your family to go back to work on that Sunday and feel more energized to do the things that you have to do in school. Very, very important. Okay, the second one is about knowing your team. So knowing your team, do you know the strengths of your team? Have you sat down with every single member? And I'm not just talking about teachers, I'm talking about teaching assistants, I'm talking about our cleaning staff, I'm talking about HR, your admin. Have you sat down with them and had a talk to them about how long they've been in the school? And I certainly did this when I joined this organization, and I've got 7 campuses, so it took a long, long time. But I got around the campuses and I made sure that I knew who everybody was, what they do, how long they've been there, their sort of goals and aspirations, what they were passionate about. Because when you tap into that and everybody has their own strengths, those are the things that will support your school to getting to an outstanding level. We don't expect that everybody knows everything. We tap into the key strengths of our team. So knowing your team, very, very important. Champion successes. I did this actually last week. I observed a fantastic teacher who had an amazing role play in her classroom. I took a picture of it, constantly carry my phone because I'm taking pictures. I want to evidence everything and share it with everybody to inspire. And we have a Teams page. Put the photo up on Teams, tag the teacher, and then basically all 7 campuses were able to see that. This week I've gone into another campus and there's the same exact role play. And the teacher said to me, I love that role play that you posted. The teacher did a fantastic job. I've now done that. Look at this, Miss Holly. Wow. That's what you want to see. So it's sharing the successes and championing, all those great things that your staff are doing. And then lastly, with this one, celebrating birthdays. Birthdays are really, really important. It's a special day. We're celebrating our birth date, and what we do here, and I've seen it in other schools as well, at the end of the month, we get together all the November birthdays. It's November now, and we celebrate everybody's birthday. Such a simple and effective thing to do. Okay, right, I'm going to go on to the next one. Mr. Lachlan also spoke about this one. Okay, so anticipating problems and coming up with solutions. So accountability ladder, I'm going to show you another image now. It's a very simple yet powerful tool that I'm now using in meetings with staff, and it's drawing their attention to we are accountable. When we walk in that door in the morning, we are accountable. this is our job, this is what we do. And if we find problems, and guaranteed you're going to find problems on a working day, you know, how do we find the solutions? So the accountability ladder, where do you stand? I'm always saying to teachers, let's look at the top of the ladder. You know, let's acknowledge the reality of the problem, let's own it, let's find a solution to the problem, and then let's make it happen. And this is not just with teachers, parents as well. Parents come with problems, with queries, and, you know, tell me, what's the problem? Look at this accountability ladder. How can we find a solution? So it's involving parents with the solutions as well, and students. I interviewed a secondary student panel last week. It was an internal review, and I sat with secondary students, and they had many problems they wanted to share. However, they had the solutions as well, and they were able to give really good solutions that the academic board that I'm part of hadn't even thought about. And it's the voice of our students that really matters. They've got the ideas. They come up with better ideas than us. I think sometimes we can complicate things, whereas a student, you know, can make it very, very simple. So I'm always saying to staff, you know, let's not look at the bottom rungs of the ladder. I don't want people blaming each other. I don't want to hear excuses. You know, let's come up with finding solutions to actually make things happen. Okay, and then lastly, effective communication. And this has also been spoken about this afternoon. So being approachable. And I spoke about how I will go and sit with staff, and I make sure that I do that now and again, and they know that they can speak to me. They see me as a human being, and they are I listen to them. I learn to listen. I am an active listener in that I listen to the things that they say, and then together we're finding the solutions. So going back to the previous slide that I just mentioned, we solve the problems together. And I think it's really important to be clear on roles and responsibilities. People do need to know what they're accountable for. Somebody mentioned, and I think, Wayne, that was you, you know, you have very different roles now during COVID-19. You know, your job description essentially has changed. So it's being clear what those roles and responsibilities are, having those core values embedded in your community, everybody seeing the same core values and understanding them and believing them, creating them even themselves, and then understanding the mission and the vision of the school. What is the mission? What is the vision? Where are we going over time? What do we want to do by the end of 6 months, by the end of the year next year? And it's making sure that everybody understands that through effective communication. So there's a quote that I have here at the bottom of my slide. This is a Secretary of Health, Education and Welfare it's a quote from the 1990s actually. And John W. Gardner, if I had to name a single all-purpose instrument of leadership, it would be communication, and absolutely fundamental to moving the school forward. And, you know, teach the children how to communicate as well. Very important, I think, you know, communication and language, especially with English additional language speakers, you know, teach them how to communicate and express themselves, talk about their feelings, really, really important. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. I did write something down earlier that I wanted to end with. So my overarching message is listen to your staff, develop a deep emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is very, very important, and lead with sincere empathy. And you do those things and you get your teachers, your staff, your community on your side. Thank you, Jackie.
Wow, Miss Holly, thank you so much. That was very good. Lots of recurring topics that you talked about as well. This is a question I'm throwing back to all of you. Just like you said, during challenging times, it's often very difficult and I think because it's challenging for leaders, they often tend to lean towards cheerleading. So how does a leader not lose sight of the entirety of the word? Because leading matters as much as the cheering. How are you balancing this as leaders?
I'm muted. Oh, okay. No, I think I'm unmuted here. Gee, I don't know if there's a single answer to you, but what I can say is keeping an eye on an overview of everything. Obviously, networking, I have been talking to other principals at my level, you know, see what they are and what they're thinking. But I think it's important to teach your middle leaders. I think Lachlan mentioned that earlier, how so important to have your middle leaders, because they really can drive the force for you. And the other thing is the teachers themselves, going right down to that. It's going, I've been going into distance learning lessons, you know, it's fascinating watching how they work. You know, everyone's got 2 screens now in their distance learning lessons. So they figured this out. They needed to have 2 screens. But it's just something they needed. But I think you have to work with all the people at all the respective different levels. The IT department, you know, we're on speed dial with them. You know, I've got their personal phone numbers, the IT department now. So you've got to be really, I think, in connecting with everybody. And it is very demanding. I think emotional intelligence, I think Holly's almost hit it on the nail on the head there. It is exhausting though. I tell you, it's a long hours, but you're getting better. We're getting better there. But I think what I've tried to do with my management team, not just me, my whole management team, I've had to train them up as well to get them. I can't do it all. They really need to step it up as well and work with those middle leaders and work with the teachers and be in touch with them. So I think that's where working with everybody, being connected and communicating with them.
Thank you.
Do you want me to jump in there?
Sure.
I mean, I think Holly mentioned it as well. It's about those cross-functional teams that you create. And I know one of the topics was about team and creating high-performing teams. And to me, that is one of the key essential pieces that a good leader will do. Because our legacy is walking out of the door and the school continues without us. If it continues to go without us and shines, that's our legacy. That's really, I think, as leaders, what we look for in schools when we walk out of it. I think any leader would want that. Now, to do that, you do have to rely on those teams that feed up and feed down. So, and you make them cross-functional. So it isn't always the leader that has to be on top of and micromanaging everything. And I think it's important you don't do that. You give people opportunities to make mistakes. You make a safe environment for those things to happen. And those cross-functional teams are really important. And I mean cross-functional in terms of you pick people all the way across the organisation, not just your SLT members, not just your MLT leaders. It is class teachers, admin staff, support staff, and you still create them. Don't think you leave them to, you still think about who's on those teams. You also put on those teams people that have a good experience about leading teams. So they can be by example and they can show, and then you chair and let everyone else chair. It shouldn't be just one person all the time. So I think if you can move with those sort of people and build that trust, you can distribute that sort of thinking and therefore support back. There's my piece.
Okay, thank you so much for that. I have some questions here, but because of time, we'll not be able to ask them. I'll send these questions over to you all individually and we'll get back to the people who asked these questions. How time has flown by. So thank you all so much for joining us today for the Russell Khaimah School Principal event. We would like to once again thank our panelists for sharing their inspiration and offering support to other principals as well as educators in leadership positions. This is one of the springboards for principals working in Russell Khaimah to build stronger professional support networks, while learning from experiences of others. So we certainly learned so much from the four of you. Thank you, Ms. Holly. Thank you, Mr. Lachlan. Thank you, Ms. Wafa, and thank you, Mr. Wayne. For those of you who joined us later, or if you know someone who would have enjoyed this conversation, we will have the recordings of this on our YouTube channel, on the Russell Khaimah Teachers Network and other social media platforms, and share the links with everyone who attended. When you leave this webinar, a link to a survey on today's session will appear. We would appreciate that you take 2 or 3 minutes to give us your feedback. And if this is your first event with the Al-Qasimi Foundation, please don't forget to sign up for our mailing list to receive communications on other upcoming events. On behalf of the Al-Qasimi Foundation, thank you so much for joining us today and have a lovely day. Thank you. Have a great afternoon and good evening, Miss Holly.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you.
So much for coming. Nice chatting. Bye-bye.